Welcome to AuthorTube News, where two authors get together and talk about things that affect our careers and our livelihoods. I am your co-host, Carrow Brown.
And I am Tamara Woods, who's also your co-host.
we are pretty feisty over some of these topics today, and I'm not even going to beat around the bush. Real quick, we are going to talk about Nano. We are going to talk about authors behaving badly, bad news for the mid-list authors. We're obviously going to talk about COPA, and then we are going to have a conversation about hopeful authors as well. Tamara, which one do you want to do? Do you want to do the one that we were both just ranting about?
Yes.
All right, so you have all heard this magical acronym called COPA floating around, along with doomsday comments about how it's going to destroy everything that is on YouTube and everything else. What I am going to do is I'm going to do a quick overcap about how we got here, and then we are just going to express our thoughts and feelings on this. So, for those of you who are not aware, COPA actually stands for Child Online Privacy Act, which had to do with protecting the child's identity, identified as an individual that was 13 or younger, from having their information taken on the internet, whether it be from shady individuals or corporations looking to use it against them in an ad sense. Now, when this came into being, everybody followed the law or the letter of the law, but they did not follow the spirit of the law. So while these sites and these individuals were not collecting child identification like address and names, they were still collecting cookies, their browsing history, and that led them to make an idea about what demographic they were and then make personalized ads, because statistics show that if you have a personalized ad, you're more likely to sell products. Now, we have to keep moving on to 2013, where this changed and web cookies could no longer be accessed without the consent of parents. Now, it gets a little shady because kid content started to explode on YouTube, and this took the form of like cartoons, toy reviews, whatever you name it. I can speak from personal experience that when I was a teacher, we definitely used YouTube a lot because YouTube was making some really good content, sometimes from teachers, sometimes from toy developers, sometimes from people trying to do science to explain to kids. Like, it was just all over the place, and I know that we were using it. Now, it gets worse because in 2018, that's when the child advocacy groups got together and basically went after YouTube and sued them. And the YouTube settled earlier this year for the sum of, I think it was $107 million, and the agreement to make changes to the guidelines in order to not target children anymore. So I just summarized 10 years of shit in that.
That was a lot. Do you need a drink?
Yeah, you talk. I'm gonna have some water.
So, here's some of the problems, or the biggest problem I have with COPA is how vague it is. It's so entirely vague that it feels as though it could be applied almost indiscriminately. So let's say one of the guidelines that they're talking about is, does your video appeal to kids, and kids being defined as someone who's under the age of 13. But what does it mean to appeal to a child? For instance, I don't have any videos on my channel that are specifically for children, but I might have something that appeals to children. There could be animation. There might be music that sounds childish. Heck, if I have, let's say, my pets on there with me, is that going to appeal to a child? Yes. Does that mean I'm targeting children? No. But the distinction isn't made. And that's a problem.
Yeah, it is a huge problem. It's definitely hitting a lot of people hard. All the cartoonists on YouTube are really concerned about this because part of the guidelines about what identifies for children has to do with a childlike character, has to do with cartoons, has to do with toys. And I can tell you that the moment these guidelines came out, Otherworld Inc., which is where I work at, we took everything off YouTube. We took it all off. Because the thing is that if you violate this, COPA can come after you for $42,000.
And who has 42 grand on videos that a lot of us aren't even being paid for? We're just doing this out of joy and interest in community and wanting to share information, et cetera, et cetera. Or if you are making something, you might not be making a lot. You know, you're being able to go out a few times for dinner on your AdSense check. Like, most people aren't making thousands upon thousands of dollars from YouTube. We're going to have links, by the way, for things that we're referencing and such. So when I was watching the initial video from YouTube that was explaining this freaking lawdust, one thing that they suggested was to consult a lawyer.
Sorry. To talk to my lawyer cost $1,000 per phone call. I don't know about you guys.
Y'all, I have over 500 videos on my channel. Do you know how much time that would be? How much money that is to talk to a lawyer about all those videos? And I'm not even a consistent uploader. Oh my goodness. Imagine someone who has a drawing channel who's been at it for at least as long as me. Wow. That's an insane number.
And you can't just talk to any lawyer either. You have to talk to a lawyer that specializes in online media content. So my literary lawyer isn't going to do jack shit for me on my YouTube channel.
And I know that a lot of us, again, we're talking in the AuthorTube community, maybe people who enjoy AuthorTube content. So we're not big players here in this game. However, we still have content. And we support a lot of other creators who have bigger platforms, who could really have like a gut punch from this. Mm-hmm. It's going to essentially, any video that is deemed as being for children will, in essence, disappear from the platform. It will not be promoted. You will not be able to use your community tab for it. You will not be able to have comments on it. You can't save it to a playlist. So if someone is creating content that could appeal to children, what would even be the point of making it anymore? And it really angers me that there is a YouTube for kids. And instead of all of this being taken to that, we adults who are creating content for adults that may be viewed by children, but oh my goodness, I'm not going to everybody's house telling kids to watch these videos, that we have to deal with this. We have to deal with the fallout. And I just wish that for once, YouTube would support their content creators.
Yeah, I would like that too. I know, so I have thoughts too. I agree with everything that you're saying. One of the things I do know is that they made these guidelines really vague, so that way COPA can't come after them. It's like, oh, well, it could be interpreted this way and that way. Like, the way that they selected the wording on this was very, very careful. And then the way that they pushed the responsibility of verifying, that was good too, because they basically said, well, if you happen to find the video and you label it that way, then we'll do something about it. That was one of the things that they did. So, and that's pretty sneaky, because they pushed it off onto the FTC, and the FTC is already undermanned as it is. So they're not going to check. There's just no way.
Yeah, they've been undermanned for how many years now?
Since they were made. If it's government funded, it's underfunded. That is a quote from Carrow Brown. You can put it on my tombstone. Now, one thing that I do want to throw out there, because I know a lot of videos are coming out with like, oh my god, the doom is here, right? I want us to think back to a couple years ago when the net neutrality thing was going on, right? And we all had a similar reaction to that, but then nothing happened, right? So there is the possibility that nothing will come of this either, for a variety of reasons. You want to say something? Go.
Oh no, I don't have anything going.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, I hear her. She's taking an intake. Now, here's my concern, and Carrow Brown likes to put on her tinfoil hat, okay? So, a lot of what YouTube has been doing, like, from the outside, it looks really juvenile and it looks really dumb, right? Like, they're doing changes, they're not stress testing them, and for me, that looks really odd. My grim thought involving this situation is that this is just heralding a bigger change that's coming in January or February. Kind of like before when Adpocalypse happened the first time, and then what happened right after that? TV networks came onto YouTube. So I think something else is coming down the pipeline, and this is just kind of like a distraction so that way we're not paying attention to whatever it is.
Great. Well, let's hope not.
Like I said, it's Carrow's tinfoil hat, so.
Good old tinfoil. Great for any occasion. So I'm really interested in hear what you guys have to say about it. What do you think? We have links so that you can do a little bit of your own research. Don't just take our word for it. Become informed. It's important. And if you do feel some type of way, you want to let the FTC know how you feel about it, there's a link as well where you can voice your opinion.
Yeah, there's also a thing for a petition to try and go against it. I don't know if it's going to work, but if we get like the entire of YouTube to be like signing this, maybe they'll like, I don't know, listen to us. Could you imagine what would happen to the economy if YouTube just crashed?
Ugh. And now you take off your tinfoil hat because it's going to give me heartburn.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking long term. And for those of you who are kind of like, well, where do we go? Because I would tell you to not solely invest in YouTube at this point because it's just not stable and it's just not something that we can rely on. But think about other places where you can put your presence and be known at there. Just don't solely stock here on YouTube. Back up your videos. Maybe take a look at BitChute or Vimeo or something.
I'm wondering though if this is going to be rolled out with these other video streaming platforms as well, or if it's just applying to YouTube. I wasn't clear on that point because all of this is very YouTube centered, but I just wondered.
I think COPA's honestly going after YouTube in particular because they're the biggest offenders of this. Everybody else hasn't been as in everybody's faces, and the fact that it's tied to Google is probably not helping the YouTube staff at all. On that note, would you like to talk about one of our less depressing topics?
Well, let me give you just a quick NaNoWriMo note. It is, what is this, the third week?
Yes.
Wow, how did that happen? And people are starting to verify their 50,000 words. So you might notice when you go to the website and you're going to, normally there's a verification process, but this year it has been suspended and is supposed to come back next year. So it's not an error. There's nothing wrong with your machine. There's just no verification this time around.
Yeah, they're doing the honor system.
So just for your FYI. So you want to get into a little bit of some Twitter drama?
Twitter drama? Yes, especially if it doesn't involve me.
So let's start this conversation off with authors behaving badly. So have y'all seen, the tweet and delete from Sarah Dessen?
Yep, I saw that.
To give you a summary, the Northern State University has this volunteer committee where students get to choose a visiting author. It's called Common Reads. And apparently it's the 10-year anniversary. Huzzah. For the school paper, an alum was interviewed. I'm not going to mention her name because it's really not necessary. And she said that she joined the committee specifically so that Sarah Dessen wouldn't be selected for Common Reads, because her books are fine for teen girls, quote unquote, but it wasn't up to the level of Common Reads. Sarah saw this and screenshot it, took out the woman's name. However, people were able to very much figure out who she was. She ended up deleting all of her social media profiles. I looked very soon after all of this exploded. They were all gone. Because all of these authors started defending Sarah. And some of those defenses came on real hot, real heavy, got people upset. And so they all went after this unassuming alum. So here's the hot take on authors who respond super negatively to criticism. Don't, especially when you have a huge platform. And I'm sure it was a knee-jerk reaction on her part and on the part of her friends who were defending her and who were very upset on her behalf. But the problem with it is that as authors with big platforms or growing platforms, we have reach We have the ability to get people behind us, and fans and stands will want to, come to our rescue, want to help us. So this is the part where, it's the author behaving badly. Don't react. It's just like a review on a book. Go to your group chat, go to your Discord, moan all about it, but don't necessarily put it out there in the public for public consumption, in my opinion.
I had a couple things I wanted to add to that, because when you told me that you were researching it, I went and stuck my nose in there too. So when I'll be honest, like, I live under a rock, so I didn't know who this author was. And I can kind of understand her reaction to the wording. I mean, obviously her response was not appropriate, as Tamara is saying. There were a couple things that I noticed right after this happened that made me go, ooh, that's not good. So first off, her friends that came to her defense, they deleted those tweets. Most of those tweets are gone. Because when they went and did some research and found out what was actually happening, they were like, oh, no, I don't want to be part of that. The other thing that happened, and this is what makes me a little bit worried, is that I went, because like I said earlier, I didn't know who this person was, right? So I was like, well, I typed in her name and I went and searched her up, and I went to her wiki page, right? So within a day of this, like, of me finding out about this, somebody had gone into the wiki page under her career thing and put a whole paragraph detailing this incident there. First off, it doesn't belong there. That's not part of her career. That's just shit that she did.
Yeah, that was a tweet that blew up out of proportion. And I don't feel like that should be a mar against her career at all. And her tweet has also been deleted, and the university issued a tweet where they apologized for it, and this, that, and the other. But I kind of want to move this conversation away from her hurt feelings and bad behavior and more about, so books that are written for teenagers aren't of value for a college discussion.
Oh, yeah, I read that, and I was like, excuse you.
That is really the problem that I have with this. Granted, I do not approve of the way all of these grown-ass folks behaved. Very poor behavior. But the idea that, because Ready Player One was a book that was approved for common reads, and I think that they also talked about and had Angie Thomas with The Hate You Give, I think. I'm not positive. So what makes a good teenage book for college discussion? And why aren't books that are more targeted toward girl teenagers, I don't know, just seen as why are they seen as unworthy? It was really interesting to me to see all of the people who were writing to Sarah, sending all these tweets and things before she had deleted her post, and who were saying that her books, were inspirational, and they got them through tough times, and they got them started on their writing journeys and all of this. So is it only impactful if the book is talking about tragedy? Is it only impactful if it's, a sci-fi set in like some dystopian future? Is it not impactful if it's for young girls, for teenage girls? What do you think about that?
I mean, so the problem with that question is that it's going to include a larger issue that is hard to tackle right now, which has to do with the way that colleges are run right now, because everything that is picked for a syllabus or whatever is going to follow whatever agenda that the college has itself, and a lot of them have taken stances that I personally am just not comfortable with. With the way that they decide to handle discussions or explore materials. I could dive into some examples, but I don't think that's really going to answer your particular question right now. And another thing, unfortunately, to take into account when it comes to stuff like that is it's going to come down to perspective. I could think of a lot of books that were targeted towards young women that I think are both amazing and empowering, and I can also think of some that are horrible. But at the same time, I've met individuals who think the opposite of the books that I think of. It's really hard to kind of narrow that down, and I just don't have a right answer for that.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what their guidelines for common reads are. So I unfortunately I can't speak to that. And again, this it's totally volunteer, and the committee of students decides what books they discuss each year. So it's like they bring someone to campus and talk about their book.
Oh yeah, that was part of it too, because the people that they wanted to select were people that they wanted to be able to bring and actually talk to. I think one of the books that they ended up picking was somebody who worked at a facility, like a prison facility, and he wrote, either he had a collection of stories about people who were in prison or something like that. I didn't read it as in-depthly as you did, but that was somebody that they could get a hold of that would come to the college.
Right. And you know, they they have talked about a variety of books from kind of motivational things to fiction. It didn't just stay with one genre. So I think that's something to take into consideration too. But I want to know what y'all think. Of course, we again have the links in the description, the stuff that I'm referencing. We won't have the deleted tweets, but you know, the stuff that's still available for your consumption. And I want to know what you think about books that are for teen girls. Are they, why do you think that oftentimes these books are regarded or disregarded when we're looking at, let's say, a college agenda? All right, so what do you want to talk about now, Carrow?
What do I want to talk about? Pizza, but I guess we could talk about something else.
Thick crust.
Yeah, I'm hungry. Okay, so we can either talk about. Oh, I only had 2 articles because I wanted to talk about COPA. So we could talk about the Publisher Weekly article that had to do with the mid list. I know you don't like that either.
Let's get into it.
Let's rip this band-aid off. Okay, so Publisher Weekly came out with an article that I will have listed down below for your perusing pleasure that centered on the fact that mid-list book authors are disappearing, and it went into a couple of different reasons. They threw out some numbers, and they had some anonymous people talking about why this was happening. And I know Alexa Dunn did a video on this, and she was very detailed with it, and I really appreciate her kind of diving in to all of those different topics. I want to talk about what I know about the mid-list authors and why they're disappearing, because first off, a lot of the people who are giving statements in this in this article, they're not giving their names. And that is very telling to me about how the publishing industry is treating its workers right now, if they are not willing to come out and say their name and talk about these things. So just think about that for a moment.
Yeah, you know, I was struck by that too, and Alexa was too during her video. That it feels a little interesting that virtually everyone was anonymous. I don't know if there was one person who was actually quoted with their name.
I don't think so. That was just one thing. I was like, person that works at a publisher said this. And, I am the kind of person where I'm like, if you're going to tell me stuff, I need to know who you are, where you come from, where your credentials are. Because if these are people who work for like little tiny publishers, they're going to have a different take than people who work for big publishers and all of that. So at least say where you work at or something.
I think that as far as that went, it was like a big publisher, or, it was very,
vague.
One of the top 5.
Yeah, whatever. Either own it or get out. That's just a Carrow thing. But so here's what I want to talk about. So the reason that the mid-list is disappearing is for a variety of reasons, but I can tell you guys for a fact some reasons why this is happening. 1, publishers are not supporting the authors because they are not bestsellers. Bestsellers make 90% of the income, and they are 10% of the publishing house's revenue, right? So because they are not getting supported in the same way that the big titles are getting supported, they get frustrated and they leave. There was a panel done over at Full Sail University, and one of the speakers named Kim Craft, I was very interested in what she had to say because she was with one of the big five, and she basically went with working with them to being self-published. And a lot of the reasons that she did that was because when she would ask for help or ask for anything, the response that the publisher would give her is like, oh, well, we only give that to the bestsellers. Oh, we only do that for our bestsellers. That's only something that we reserve for the bestsellers. So part of the reason that this mid-list is disappearing is because of the publishers. They don't give a fuck.
Ouch.
Yep.
That's rough.
It is rough.
Kind of like the disappearing middle class, but I'm not going to get into politics. It's just, I'm going to throw that out there.
Yeah, there was a statement in there where it was like being a mid-list author is like being middle class, and nobody wants that. And I'm like, okay, you went a little too far for me. But
I mean, I think middle class is way better than abject poverty, but that's just me.
Yeah, I'm right there too. So you got these authors who are leaving because they're just not getting treated good. I will say from my own personal experience, I did work with a publisher, and at one point I was like, what exactly are you doing that I cannot do? Because everything that you're doing are things that I could do if I decided to self-publish. Short clip of that conversation did not go well. But moving on. Another element, yeah. Another element that's coming into play is actually the consumer. And not trying to say it's a you problem, but what's happening right now is a lot of people who consume books are becoming very critical, and they are lashing out very loudly about things that they don't like about books. This, as a result, is going to cause publishers to be less likely to take on risky books or books that they worry may kind of like invoke some kind of reaction from the public at this point. And the other thing that's coming into play is that consumers do want their media in an affordable way. And I mentioned this, I think, in the first or second podcast when I was talking about Amazon. But Amazon is always going to the big sellers and saying, you need to make these books cheaper. And in telling them to make the books cheaper, the authors don't get paid as much. There's less advances, so on and so forth.
What a mess.
It is. And I haven't even talked about the big reason. I haven't even talked about this. It's not really a big secret. It's been mentioned before. But one thing that publishers don't like to talk about is that they will sign on authors who are a competitor for their big breadwinner. And they'll say that they'll go ahead and publish them, do all these things. But what they do is they just basically let them drift off into nothing. Their book will get published. It will get some of the bells and whistles, but it won't get promoted. It may not get into bookstores. It's just going to be put away on a shelf and forgotten. And that results in those authors still having to do everything themselves like they would have done if they were self-published. And then they end up getting frustrated and they don't stay. And yeah, that's a thing. That happens.
Oh, gosh. So what can authors do?
Authors are going to have to weigh their choices really, really carefully, because like when I decided to sign a contract, I did it with a lot of hesitation, because I mean, for those of you who have never heard me before, Tamara knows that I'm a very aggressive person when it comes to my books and my business. And when I need things done, I usually need some kind of estimate about when things are going to get done, not what we'll call you when we have time. Like, I need to know right now, otherwise I'm going to be pacing back and forth. So with I feel so bad saying this. I have been with 3 publishers because of this. Now, granted, the first 2 publishers I was with were kind of smaller, so they weren't really ready for me to get in their face like that. But when I came and I just asked for a rough timeline, they couldn't give me that. And I actually would honestly encourage a lot of our authors and writers to do that too. Ask for what marketing plan that the publisher's going to do. Ask what efforts they're going to do. And then get ready to tell them what you are going to do too, because a lot of the outbound marketing is getting pushed more and more onto authors. That's why a lot of publishers, if you go to their websites and you go through like whatever query form they have, the first thing they say is like, what's your Twitter handle? What's your Facebook handle? Do you have a YouTube channel? Because they're trying to check and see if you have a following. Right? They want to know if you are guaranteed sales.
If only anyone was a guaranteed sale.
I know, right? So yeah, do your due diligence, know what you can do, and be a Carrow Brown. Ask what they're going to do that you can't do. Are they going to talk to booksellers? Are they going to get your book into the Library of Congress? Like, what are these people doing? Yeah. And if they can't do something that you can't do, I don't know why you're talking to them.
Strong words, Carrow. Strong words.
That's me. Protect your shit.
Because no one else is going to do it for you.
No, and then they're going to take like 60% of your profits for you doing 90% of the work. I mean, just think about it. Seriously, just think about that for a moment.
Now, granted, there's definitely people who were wanting to be traditionally published because they want the prestige of being able to say that they have been accepted by this house, and it's a childhood dream. They want to be in easier to access to libraries and potentially bookstores, but there's with either way, with either path, there's issues and there's detractions, and it's good to be aware of what you need to do to protect yourself, your work, and to try to get the most out of putting your book out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, do due diligence, weigh those choices, decide what's best for you. I mean, I do a little bit of both. Tamara's done both. We both sat at that crossroad.
Yeah. And, and I think that we were better for it, honestly, even if it was a difficult road. So moving from there,
I have all the fun topics. Life sucks.
Well, I mean, this isn't the best of happy, good times here.
Isn't it like it's supposed to be Christmas time? Where's all the good articles at? Come on, y'all.
Speaking of good articles, if you guys have anything that you'd like us to check out, hit us up on Twitter or send us an email.
Yeah.
We're here. We're waiting. So here's some bad news. Bad news for you author hopefuls who've just published one book and you're wanting to sustain yourself and be able to have an income there. You're gonna need to publish more. So Publishers Weekly posted this article about, it was called Make Your Living as an Author, and that link, of course, again, in the description. This one was looking at people who have just started, so they have less than 6 books, and they're making less than, I think it was $25,000 a year, and then people who are making over $100,000. And so we're looking at people who are just starting out, and then people who are making $100,000 a year, and they were trying to figure out what is happening so that the people are making that kind of sustainable income. And just like everyone tells you in the self-pub world, in order to be pulling down those sweet, sweet checks, you have to publish more. So the authors who were making $100,000 per year tend to publish an average of 25 books. All right. And this made me think of the 20 books to 50K Facebook group. They just had their Vegas conference last week. And their whole concept is, if you do your due diligence, you work hard, you produce 20 books, you will be closer to hitting that 50K a year. So 20 books to 50K. Anyway, I recommend this group to anyone who is in the indie publishing industry. I think that there's good tips for people who are traditionally published as well, but it is focused on self-publishing. So a link to that group will be down there as well, because I think that is just important. There's so many people who are big sellers who are in that group giving advice and letting you see their back end, which is, it's immeasurable in helpfulness, and it's free. So these authors who are hitting that 100K annual, they are also working 30 hours a week on their writing. So they're treating it like as a full-time or super hardcore part-time job. And the last point that I'm going to share is that even though Amazon is driving sales, it's not the end all be all. And so they were talking about, the term is going wide and having your book available on more than just Kindle Unlimited, and being able to use these different, like having it on Google Play and Barnes and Noble and with Apple, iTunes, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I don't want to go through all of the points that they brought up in the article. So most of them I haven't spoken about, because I think it's a good one to just peruse. But what do you think about this whole idea of being able to have a career, a sustainable career as an author?
I don't think it's going to be done right away. I mean, obviously, so from what I know, if you want to start getting some kind of stable income, you need to have at least 5 books out and you need to have them wide. I do agree with that, just because the problem with Amazon, the Kindle Unlimited program, is that it's good for the reader, but it fucks over the author. Like, it's so bad. It pays them less. I mean, like, I have so many things that I could say about that, or this isn't the episode for that. But having it wide and available in a number of platforms is going to be what you want to do. You want to have the paper copy, you want the digital, and you want to get the audiobook, just because that's just the various mediums that people are drawn to.
I would say that Kindle Unlimited does have a bright spot for the author in terms of being able to get your book to new eyes. It's much harder to go wide and get your books seen, get them visible as someone who doesn't have a name out there. So
yeah, a strategy that you could use is if you have a series, you can put that first book as Kindle Unlimited and then not have the rest of them do that. I've seen people use that strategy plenty of times.
Or you can start in Kindle Unlimited and then eventually, when you're ready, take your books out and then go wide in that way too. You know, there's so many different ways of doing this. And I think that it's important that you, as an author, figure out what's going to work for you. Do your due diligence, do your research, have writer friends, discuss these things, and figure out a path that you want. And also decide on what your goal is. Is your goal to just publish? Is your goal to be in a bookshop? Is your goal to have a sustainable income from your writing? What do you need? What do you want? And try to make your track reach to that goal, in my opinion.
It's a wonderful opinion. You know, there was one more thing that you and I talked about that we didn't have on the agenda, which had to do with Dream Spinner. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Sure.
So Dream Spinner, I'm sure as some of you may know, is the publisher that I has at. I think it was back a couple months ago in September, we first started talking about Dream Spinner and how they weren't paying their authors, and they sent one author a check for $1, and that was completely ridiculous. One of the authors who was with them, and I'm going to mispronounce his name probably like I did last time, but it's TJ Klune. He did a tweet the other day where he was talking about how, I'm just going to read the tweet. So he said, Dream Spinner did not send out an update last night as they were supposed to do. This morning they paid me $7,000 for Q3 royalties. With that paid, they now owe me just over $30,000 for Q3. There are still authors who haven't been paid for Q2. And let me find the second tweet. Whether it was malicious or not, and they still haven't given a concrete answer as to exactly where our money went. DPS used funds they weren't supposed to use. They stole from us, and the fact that they still accepting new authors blows my mind. Do not submit to them. Yeah, please don't submit to them. Please don't.
You know, like we were talking about having a path and, goals. Well, I would hope that one of your goals is to actually get paid, so don't submit to them.
Yeah, and Dream Spinner really ticks me off on a lot of different ways, because for those of you who don't know, Dream Spinner is supposed to be a publisher that kind of works with the books that involve representation, with the rainbow community, as I like to affectionately refer to them. While there is a need for representation in books, it's not as specialized as Dream Spinner says that it is. And so people go there with their works and their stories and they're getting happy, but then you've got Dream Spinner taking their money and spending it. Like, that's literally what's happening. I talked a lot more about this in the one episode about where those funds are probably going.
Was that episode 2?
Yeah, that was episode 2. Because Amy sent us that story.
Yeah, Amy Tuscata.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Wow. And it's really incredible that we are almost in December and they still haven't resolved this situation.
Yeah, this
These
started
people
in
still
May.
haven't been paid. Like, that's insane.
Yeah,
It's absolutely insane.
And I'm really surprised. So my surprise that people are still submitting to them is the fact that they have a page in Writer Beware right now. So like anytime I go and I talk to somebody, the first place that I will usually go to is Writer Beware to see if there's anything there. And I know Writer Beware doesn't just post up things like a gossip site. They actually ask for receipts and screenshots, and then they'll post a very objective statement about the group. So I mean, again, due diligence, please look at these things before you do these things, because I just want Dream Spinner to go away.
Wow. It's really disheartening because they're targeting a vulnerable population who are just really aching to have their voices heard and have their work out there. And it's despicable. And protect yourselves, y'all. Protect yourselves. Protect your work.
So, man, this is really not this is not the happy episode. What do we got left? So now that brings us to the only bright part of this podcast today, which has to do with the book releases. We're too cheap for sound. Sorry, guys.
This is what you get. Budget.
Budget. So anyway, I will go first. I would like to go ahead and talk about Cassie Beebe's book that's coming out. It is called Broken Together. It is a new adult romance, and it is scheduled to come out on December 7th. It's going to be on Amazon only. Her tagline is, "He didn't have to hide his scars because she had them too. He didn't have to be whole when he was with her because she wasn't either. They could just be broken together." Oh. So the comment that she left for us is, "Thank you for putting this together. Also, if you can direct people to my YouTube channel for my pre-sale giveaway. Everyone who pre-orders the book will enter to win a bunch of other goodies, including some AuthorTube books." So there's going to be a link down there for that for you guys. So that way, if you want in on that stuff, you can get in on that.
I do love a good giveaway.
Free stuff!
And her book's launching the day after my birthday.
What?
Wow.
Is that a hint?
Nobody cares. I know. Gasp. The second book is by Melissa Frey, and it's titled The Secret of the Codex. And unfortunately, it's already launched. However, we got this link, in between the first stream and this one. So we wanted to share it anyway. And it's an archaeological supernatural adult thriller, and it's going to be available, or it is available online on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And the tagline is, "Somewhere buried deep underground lie an ancient secret." So I think that sounds pretty flippin' cool. And this is a relaunch, second edition of her debut novel, The Secret of the Codex. She relaunched it with a new cover and a preview of the second book in the series.
Ooh, very nice.
So round of applause.
We're clapping in circles. I know you can't see.
I am actually doing the same thing. We are so nerds.
We are. Well, I hope in the next podcast we can actually have some joyful news to share with you guys. If you happen to find some joyful news, maybe a debuted author saves a kitten or something, please send that our way, because all the stuff that we're finding is kind of ugh.
Yeah, and we all love this whole writing gig, so we need some more uplifting stories. We're gonna find some, because 'tis the season to have happier stories.
It
la,
is.
La, la. Nah.
That was wonderful. Okay, so with that, guys, thank you so much for listening in today. I hope that you liked it. Please feel free to thumbs up the video. Feel free to share the video. Feel free to send people to the video. We are actually super flattered and honored by the amount of growth that we have gotten so far, and I can't even begin to thank you guys for the wonderful discussions that we've had in our past podcasts. It really makes our day to see what you guys have to say to us.
I don't know where you came from, but please don't leave. Bring friends. I hope that you enjoy these podcasts, and I hope that if there is topics that you want us to cover, that you'll let us know, because this is supposed to be for you. It's about you and your edification, and we're just on this journey with you. So thanks so much for being here, and we're going to see you guys in the next time.
Yeah, bye. I'm going to hit the record button. Please love us. Please.
Love us.